Nova. She apparently doesn't want spoilers. She's like, no, I'm only halfway through.
Hey, thanks for joining the Escape With Me book club. Escape with me, Lizzie Sawyer.
And me, Sam Reiner.
Into our most recent read. Come with us as we evade reality and go into detail about a new book. We're going to be covering it from beginning to end, so remember, there will be spoilers.
Today we're going to Forks, Washington, published in 2020. Midnight Sun is the companion novel to New York Times bestseller novel Twilight. Taking on Edward's viewpoint instead of Bella, the book tells the story of a vampire who falls in love with a human and reveals more information on the vampire world, his family, and his motives. What was going on through his mind during the meadow scene? Why did he decide to leave Bella in New Moon? What is the family dynamic of the vampires before Bella came along? All of these questions and more are answered in this long-awaited book. So for some background for this one, I'm a Twi-hard. I have just accepted this about myself. I read all of the books several times in middle school, and then the movies came out, and then everyone hated on Twiharts, and so I just stopped. But we're back! But on the other side of that, you are not a Twihard, and you're not a Twi-hater, but you don't like it, and that's fine.
I don't like it at all. I'm actually a hardcore Potterhead instead of a Twi-hard, which for whatever reason are exact opposites.
I wouldn't say exact opposites. What I don't understand is, you've mentioned this in the past, how people told you that Twilight was the new Harry Potter, and I don't understand. That doesn't make sense.
Thus the reason why I didn't read it until high school, because I hated it, because I was like, no.
It doesn't make sense as a concept. It's a completely different genre.
It doesn't.
It's kind of a different age group, too.
It's not even that it's a sappy romance, it's just for whatever reason the vibe I get off of Twilight is very uncomfortable for me. I don't like it. And I think it's probably partly because I don't like Edward. He's very demanding and decides things for Bella, but at the same time, Bella is very submissive, and it's like, get a backbone, please. And the little bit of a sort of backbone that Stephenie Meyers gives her is like, oh yeah, no, she can fight back. And I'm like, no, she's argumentative, and then just goes along with what he wants.
Yeah. Her strengths are definitely more in the characterization, where it doesn't feel like either of them ever do anything that's super out of character. But if you don't like their character, it doesn't get better. There's no moment where you're going to be like, yes, finally, you have changed or developed in any sort of way, because they really don't.
They super don't. It really annoys me.
Which I think is a good example for this book. If you liked the Twilight series, you're gonna like this book. But if you did not like the Twilight series, this is not gonna change your mind whatsoever. So please skip it. Don't read the book and then hate it and then hate on people, because that is what happened last time. Let us enjoy things.
Let Sam enjoy things and allow me to continue to dislike this book series.
Yeah. On the judging a book by its cover, we knew what this book was gonna be about, so we couldn't really, what's it going to be about?
Oh no, what could this book possibly be about? Maybe vampires?
But something we can talk about is the symbolism. So the previous 4 books had kind of a vague symbolism. Like the first one was the apple, and I think it was supposed to be like a Garden of Eden thing, and so on and so forth throughout them. Like Eclipse has the broken piece of ribbon, and New Dawn is the queen, and you can make all sorts of connections with those. Realizing I've forgotten what the New Moon book cover looks like. It's been 10 years.
Google it real fast.
Oh, it was a flower. That's what it was. It was a wilting flower.
Right, the kind of like painting the roses red kind of flower.
Yeah. But this one, it's a pomegranate, and it kind of looks like a bleeding heart. Like if you cut a heart in half and it was bleeding out.
Well, I thought it looked kind of like a skull, almost. 2 eyes and then kind of like the teeth almost underneath.
Yeah.
But I could also see how it would look like a heart.
But either way, you know exactly what it represents.
Oh my goodness, could it potentially be Hades and Persephone and the pomegranate of the underworld? Do they mention that at least 3 times in the book? Golly, you bet they do.
Which is kind of interesting to me, because obviously the book came before the cover. I actually do kind of like that, because that was a good parallel for him. But it makes me wonder why they picked the pomegranate, because the other ones are kind of vague, whereas this one's, I don't know, it's very on the nose, which was weird for the series. But it looks good. I mean, if you were to put them next to the other 4, it looks like it belonged.
It does look good. It is a nice cover for this book.
And it continues the theme of black, white, and red.
Yes, with the addition of pink.
Just a little. There's just a little bit more color.
I like pink. Pink's a good color. We can disagree on this point, and that's fine.
On pink being a good color.
Yes.
Pink's okay. Sam doesn't like pink. Now we join Edward as he thinks about how high school is a purgatory he must endure over and over again.
And you know what? He's not wrong.
He's correct. Even though I enjoyed my time in high school and I have fond memories from it, I don't think I would want to relive it whatsoever.
My ideal...
But yeah, it starts off, that's like the first line, and it feels hyperbolic. And then you think about having to relive high school, and then it seems correct.
I mean, if I had to relive high school, I'd want to relive high school as the confident individual that I am now, knowing the things that I know that I did not know then, because I would beat up a few kids.
But imagine being stuck as a 17-year-old, which is my theory. My strong theory is that when you get changed into a vampire, your brain stops developing. So if you're at 17, you're always mentally at 17.
That would be miserable because I would still be the person I was when I was 17, and I don't want to go back to that whatsoever.
Yeah, you don't have a frontal lobe developed whatsoever, which also explains a lot of his poor decision making.
You don't have a frontal lobe?
No, it is not developed whatsoever. So you can't make choices worth crap. And your emotions, your hormones haven't stabilized yet. So you're still like, if I do not have this person in love with me, I will die.
Oh, happy dagger, this is thy sheath.
Exactly. So that's my theory. That's why Edward acts the way he does, and then it makes sense. It's a YA. The characters act like teenagers. That's about right. It's a YA romance. That's about what I was expecting. YA plus vampires.
And that's what it is. And some YA books, you know, I can get behind. My favorite book lists are several YA novels, though most of them are Tamara Pierce or Patricia C. Reedy, because both of those authors write kind of old soul teenagers, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I like those more versus the ones that are like, teen angst and romance. Because I hate teen angst with a fiery passion. That being said, I do have a playlist on Spotify that is labeled Teen Angst.
I don't know. Teen angst is at least very interesting to me. I've read some romance where it's like adults and they don't have an excuse, where they have poor communication skills and have weird emotions and aren't mature. They don't have an excuse. At least YA has an excuse to be psychotic. And you just want to slam your head against the door and be like, stop. It makes the structure of romances make more sense, where if they're hyperbolic or if they're suck at communicating, at least there's an excuse.
I hate teen angst. I hate it so much.
But that's Edward in a nutshell. Angst.
Angst. But angst for 80, how many years did we say? I calculated it out.
It was 104. No, that's how old he is.
No, he's been alive for 104. He's only been a vampire for 80 something.
Yeah, it was 87. Because he's 17. He's 87. But yeah, half of the book is Edward angst. And then they make it to the meadow scene. And then there's finally some romance. And then it's back to angst. Actually, it's back to land races and then car chases. And then a lot of angst. We're back to angst.
The car chases are my favorite part of the book. I hate the angst. Please, for the love of God, will you get over yourself?
No! 17! Teenagers, man. I don't know why they're like, oh, you're an adult now. You're 18.
No, you're not.
So Carlisle is the father of this family. He's awesome.
Father used loosely. He's the father figure, quote unquote.
I mean, he technically is the father because he's made most of them too.
Into vampires.
But he is awesome. I like Carlisle a lot. And you get to learn more about Carlisle in this book because we get to spend more time with him. And Edward, whenever he remembers him being a vampire younger, obviously Carlisle's involved because Carlisle changed him first. So it was them together. And so you get to learn more about Carlisle, and you learn why all of the vampire family respects him so much. And he's just a cool dude.
Something I find very interesting is that in all of Edward's little flashbacks of little things that he's done back in the past that Carlisle had to then forgive him for, which he did. It's like, teen angst, I'm going to teen rebel. And then the next story, teen angst, I'm gonna teen rebel.
See, that's what he gets changing a 17-year-old.
Well, I mean, Edward was about to die, so I mean...
It's true.
It was now or never.
Perpetual teenager.
Which, I mean, he appears to be fine with, because he's always like, yes, no, you're back. Good job.
But I kind of like I mean, we're going to talk about Carlisle's amazingness for just turning into a vampire and then being like, you know what? I'm going to invent an entire different way to live where I don't have to kill people. That's pretty cool. But Edward's whole crusade where he was like, I'm going to kill humans, but only the bad ones. That was kind of cool too. I'm for that.
Only the bad ones.
Yes.
I want to drink blood, but I really should only kill people that are evil.
Yeah.
Because I still have a conscience. Thank you, Carlisle.
And there's a story very specifically of one of the people that he killed, and that was a really touching story, surprisingly. Out of nowhere. Not gonna ruin that, but that was just randomly really touching. What I'm kind of sad about is while we get all of this Carlisle, which is awesome because I love Carlisle, we don't get as much Esme, and that's kind of lame because we get Carlisle like he has all of these different motivations and background and history and stuff, and we don't really learn much about Esme.
All you really get is that she's loved Carlisle from day one, prior to being a vampire, and she cares a lot for the family, and that's about it.
Yeah, she's the mother in all of this. She was the second one that Carlisle changed.
After Eddie Boy.
Yeah. She's just a very stereotypical mom, where she's like, oh, I love all of my children, and I just want them to be happy, and also, when are you getting married? And I mean, she's not focusing on marriage, obviously, but she's focusing on, when are you going to turn Bella into a vampire so you can just be happy, which I'm equating to marriage. When are you just going to marry her and be happy? And then Alice is awesome. We spend more time with Alice. We even get a chapter where we go over how she plans her visions and how they work and how she can change them, and that was really cool.
It was the chapter with taking her to the hospital.
After the ballet thing, she was planning on how to cover up the evidence and stuff. So Edward is listening to her vision, and so we get to see how she does all her stuff, which is really cool. And then Edward steps out of the car and says something like, and I was going to do it all over again for the first time. That was a cool line. I really liked that line. I wrote that line down because I liked it. But we also get more information on Jasper, mainly because we actually understand his power more. Because I know we get his backstory in one of the books. I think it was Eclipse. I'm not sure if I remember that correctly or not.
Which means I don't know it because I only read Twilight.
He has a pretty cool backstory, but you learn that he can change people's emotions and stuff. But in this book, because we get to view things from Edward's head, which is we get to view things from everybody's head, and we get to see actual moments where it's like, oh, he was doing this. This is why people were acting like that, versus in Twilight where you don't really get to know why certain people are acting certain ways and stuff. So that was really cool. We got to learn more about Jasper. Jasper's much chiller than I thought he'd be.
Jasper has probably my favorite power out of everybody.
It is really cool. And his and Alice's love story where she literally just found him and was like, hey, we're gonna be in love for forever. And then he could just feel this overwhelming love from Alice and was like, okay.
You're like, oh, that's probably true because you obviously feel that way.
So we're in love now. And they're the only two that are in the family that Carlisle didn't change, because you find out Alice's backstory at the end of this, where she was changed and her creator was destroyed. Okay, that sounds really weird phrasing if you don't know what we're talking about.
She was being hunted down by a tracker vampire, and so I guess an old vampire that cared for her changed her so that she wouldn't be killed by the tracker, and so the tracker killed the old vampire instead, which is why she woke up alone.
Which we find out is James, so that's a little weird poetic justice.
Yeah, F him. What a loser.
For real, though.
Do not recommend.
0 out of 10 stars. Do not recommend.
-5 out of 10 stars. I do not recommend.
Yeah. But it led to a very interesting running through the Canadian wilds. And then apparently James knows how to work a plane. That happened. And then the car chase was really cool. I can't get over the car chase, mainly because I had no idea what the technicals were talking about. I do not know much about cars other than what I can myself change on my car.
You mean like a tire?
Well, that. But the different oils and stuff that goes into your engine and stuff. But I didn't know to that level. I'm just very impressed with Stephenie Meyer's knowledge of cars. It was technical enough where it felt realistic, but not so overly technical that you felt like you were reading a manual. And for a 17-year-old that's probably reading this, that's probably a good place to be. But speaking of cars, Rosalie...
I don't hate her.
The one caveat I will give her, the fact that she knows so much about cars and she's the one that has made all of their cars really cool. I like that. It does make me wonder, because it's like, oh, she won't wrestle still with Emmett because she doesn't want to mess up her hair, but then she'll go work on cars.
You can work on cars and not mess up your hair.
I guess if you like wrapped it up.
And she wouldn't have to worry about her nails because they're vampire nails, so they're probably like unbreakable.
Fair. But still, that was like, that's weird. But yeah, I like her more than I liked her in the Twilight series because all you know about her during the Twilight series is, oh, she doesn't talk to Bella. That's basically it. And then when she does, she's really snippy and you're like, ugh, I don't like you. But at least with Edward, you get to learn, oh, they used to really get along and they actually did have like a brother-sister vibe and they were really close to each other. And then when Edward was introducing Bella, she went into all the reasons she didn't like her. And then she was like, I'm going to try. And her trying was, of course, being snippy, but hey, it was an attempt. And then
goes immediately back to untrying.
Yeah.
Though, in her defense, her family is now in danger due to this human, so...
But they were going to be whether or not she helped, so she might as well have helped.
She did help, sort of.
Meh.
She helped.
Meh.
She didn't want to help, but she helped. The fact that she hates Bella because she put her family in this situation is valid, but she did help. From a, I'm gonna have to help because the rest of my family is all morons perspective.
Yeah, I can't remember all the details at this point. It's been too long. That's too big a book to memorize everything that happened. I do think Edward was going a little hard on her because, like you said, she did kind of help, even if her motives weren't, I want to help Bella. She was more, I want to protect my mom, so I will do the thing. I don't know. I've never understood being jealous of somebody for having something that you couldn't have anyway. Her whole reason to hate Bella to begin with was, I hate her because she's a human and she might turn into a vampire and I can't be human, so I hate her. I don't get that. I know that's something that people experience where they're jealous of things that other people have that they cannot physically have, but I think it's dumb.
I think it's more of a, she hates the idea of a human being stupid enough to like a vampire to give up her humanity, which is something that Rosalie had no choice but to give up. The idea of, I hate you because you want to give up something that I so desperately wish that I still had.
Yeah, but like I said, whether or not she gives it up or not, Rosalie still isn't human. It just feels like extra effort to hate somebody. Plus, she technically changed Emmett, so...
Emmett was dying and they had that like, we will fall in love vibe kind of that Alice and Jasper had, but from a different angle. So that's a little different. Plus, Emmett wasn't really mad about that.
No, but neither would... Anyway, Rosalie's pettiness aside. So the people of Forks, I honestly forgot all of her friends in Twilight, because they're there for about half the book. And so I honestly, to goodness, forgot all about them. Jessica and Mike and all of them. This was a nice reminder, like, hey, they existed. Because in the next book, I guess they're there in the next book, but it focuses so much on the werewolves. That's all I can remember from that book. And I think Eclipse and New Dawn, they're basically non-existent, so they get written out.
I know they're in a section with a pile of bodies because Anna Kendrick talked about filming the pile of bodies and being near the top and being cold and covered in fake blood and feeling bad for the people beneath her.
I'm pretty sure it was either a nightmare scene or it was
a nightmare scene.
I'm trying to remember, honestly. It has been so long since I've seen the first Twilight movie and I haven't seen any of the other ones.
You don't like the movies anyways.
I don't, but I did like the commentary. The commentary was hilarious, mainly because Robert Pattinson could not let go of the fact that they made him pluck his eyebrows.
My favorite thing that came out of that will forever be the silent lip reading done.
Yes.
Over the top of the movie, just in general.
The bad lip reading.
I love it so much.
Okay, so with the people, you knew that Mike was kind of a You knew that on Twilight. You didn't know that Jessica was so mean. Goodness.
Hello, fake friend.
For real. Which is hilarious because that's who Anna Kendrick played and promptly forgot that she played until a couple of years ago where she's like, holy crap, I did something in the Twilight movies.
Was she Jessica?
Yes, she was Jessica. Oh my goodness. And then Angela is freaking adorable and I love her even more.
I want a short story about Angela and Ben. Make it so.
That'd be very cute.
I care more about them than I do the rest of the characters in this book, other than Alice, but she doesn't count.
I just really love it. That side plot where Edward is like, Angela, thank you for being a true friend. What can I give you? And she doesn't want anything. And then one day she's like, I like this boy. And he's like, okay, making that happen now. Shipping this. And the way him and Emmett go about it is just really funny and dumb. And I love it. True high school drama. I just love it because it's like, oh yeah, I think I'd ask her out, but I think she's totally into like this Ben guy. And Emmett's like, you mean the guy sitting behind you? And he turns around and looks at him and is like, yeah, that guy. So I guess I won't ask her. Like, continues the conversation.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole time the dude's like, what? Angela likes me? I'm asking her out. This is happening.
It's more of a, what? Angela likes me? Should I do something about that? Oh, well, no, I have to do something about that because I have to do it before Edward does.
This will happen. I don't know. I want some short stories of the vampires just messing with humans' life like that. Where they're just like putting people together, making them date because they're sweet, and then stuff like that. It's ridiculous, and I loved it. It was just so dumb. But it worked, and it honestly was dumb because it was so realistic. Like, yep, that would work. And their whole thing was like a height difference, like she was taller than him or something, and so that was silly to begin with. So I guess it makes sense where it's like, oh, that was easily taken care of. Now you have a boyfriend. And they were the only ones at prom that were happy, because all the other ones had stupid people and they're like bitter or whatever. But Angela and Ben were like having a good time and dancing together. That's so cute. Screw Jessica and Mike. Also screw Tyler. What the heck, man?
I don't know. There's some good comedic stuff with Tyler.
There is.
Nothing else, but there's still some good comedic stuff with Tyler.
But the gumption of that dude to walk up to her and be like, hey, do you want to invite me to the female dance? Like the Sadie Hawkins. And then to be like, oh, you don't? Then I'm taking you to prom.
He didn't say I'm taking you to prom. He said, oh, well, there's always prom. And then promptly spat it around school that he was taking her to prom. And then even after, it was very blatantly obvious that she was dating Edward.
Shows up at her house.
And he's currently taking her to prom. He still shows up at the house and is like, I'm here to take Bella to the prom.
He's so dumb.
And poor Charlie's like, hey, Eddie boy, I thought you were taking Bella to the prom. And Eddie boy is like, give Tyler the phone.
It's just so funny. And because it makes it even funnier because Charlie this entire time has been super mad at Edward. Like, it's your fault she got hurt. I mean, it is his fault that she got hurt. But Charlie doesn't know that. And so Charlie has just been ignoring him and not talking to him, and just for that to be their first conversation where it's like, so Tyler has showed up. Oh my goodness. There are some really funny parts. Like there was one point where Edward was talking about how every so often Emmett and Rosalie get married again, and then apparently Bella made this face or something. He couldn't figure it out. It's like, does she want an invite to the wedding? Is that what's happening here? It's like, no, of course she doesn't want an invite to their wedding.
The only thing that made me laugh was the bit with Tyler at the end. That's the only thing I found funny in this book.
There was a couple of really funny things that actually made me laugh, which is more than I can say for some other books that have specifically been trying to make me laugh, so that's nice at least. But half of the book is before the meadow, and I feel like it should only be like 100 pages.
If that!
I can take 100 pages of Edward meeting her and falling in love. But
no, we get 300 of, oh, I like her, but I'm dangerous. I should stay away, but I like her, but I'm dangerous. I should stay away, but I like her, but I'm dangerous. I should stay away.
Bet you didn't know that I was dangerous.
I bet you that I did.
Yeah, I found a song that's like very perfectly. Anyway.
I found a bunch of different hard rock groups that their songs are like, the monster inside of me. And I'm like, oh. Edward will be my thought forever and all eternity now for songs like that.
Which, once again, I think speaks to the characterization of them, that you can actually listen to songs and be like, Edward.
Teen angst about how they're actually dangerous? Heaven forbid.
So I think that is a positive, even though it is exasperating. I think that is a positive to her writing. But yeah, it's 300 pages. But once they finally hit the meadow, there's some romance, and it's actually really cute. I like their romance, mainly because it's actually romance. And I'm tired of books that claim they're romance, and then the romance doesn't happen until like the last 2 pages. Like, I'm so mad.
Things from my note for the first half of the book. Specifically, Eddie has no self-control. Gag me with a spoon. Teens. Ugh. Dude, no. Eddie, say this with me. This is toxic. Eddie boy, you're out of your mind. Dude, she's nuts. Leave her. Dude, he's crazy. Leave him. They're perfect for each other.
I think that just sums it up.
Most of my notes are from the first half of the book. There's a couple times I just write, ugh.
But what's crazy is that takes 300 pages, which, like I said, is a little long because everything else feels not rushed. It doesn't feel rushed, but a lot happens in the last one because it's to that point. It's like, oh, he is just becoming in love with her. And then the meadow, and then baseball, and then they're chasing him, and then Bella gets in the hospital, and then prom. All of that happens in 300 pages versus the other where he runs away and then he ignores her and then he starts talking to her again, but then he ignores her and then they talk and then he starts following her around because he's convinced she's going to die, which granted.
Stupid trope is stupid. All-powerful hot guy isn't interested in any girls because they're all the same, but oh look, this girl is different.
Yeah, and I hate she's not like other girls. But this book has Alice, so...
Can we have this book but from Alice's perspective, please?
I want a book about Alice, period.
I would read that. I don't like the Twilight series, but I'd read this book from Alice's perspective.
I mean, I feel like that would probably actually be really exhausting for Stephenie Meyers to write.
I would also read this book from Rosalie's perspective because I feel like she'd have a sarcastic voice through this entire thing.
I did like how they pointed out she was just insulting Edward constantly, but she was using that as a mask so she wouldn't actually be thinking what she's thinking. I think that's really clever for someone who's been around Edward for so long to give herself some privacy. She just insults him. But yeah, I think writing an Alice book might be really exhausting, mainly because she would constantly have to be writing about her visions and stuff. But I would read that. I'm for it. I don't know where the series is going to go after this book. I don't know, because I saw in a story where she rewrote Twilight 10 years later, and the apple is green instead of red, which cute. But I don't know if she's gonna try to rewrite the entire series again, or if she's gonna keep going with Edward's perspective, or if she's gonna write ones from Alice's perspective, or if she's gonna try to write new books, maybe about that Alaska group. Or she could decide she's done with it, because in this time period, she's started a film production company, so she might just move over to film. I don't know. It's very interesting. It's not often that a writer writes a series of books and then 10 years later is like, hey, I'm going to continue. So that's kind of cool. I didn't like the host, so I can't be like, I hope she writes new material. That's totally original because I didn't like the host. It was weird. That crossed my line. That was just weird. You can just look up a summary of that book. It's weird.
Jumping to a different topic, one of the things that I hated probably the most about this book, the only thing that I truly hated versus found mildly annoying was the bit where she agrees to let him drive her to Seattle. And I know I've brought this up with you before, but I'm going to bring it up again because I actually really don't like it. There is a boy in her class who hates her, who openly hates her, that she knows hates her, but he's like, can I drive you to Seattle? And she's like, yeah, no, do not get in a car alone with a creepy dude that could take you to the middle of nowhere and kill you.
I just honestly forget about that because that happens, I say, early in the book.
In the midst of him deciding that he's bad for her and leaving and then coming back. Yes.
Well, I say early in the book because it's probably like on page 150 of...
It's like halfway almost.
Of the 300 where he's deciding that, no, we should be together.
It's right after the creepy, I'm a stalker, so I'm gonna creep on you in your bedroom thing, which I let slide because he does actively admit that he's wrong, but then say that it's fine because he's a vampire, so...
Which granted, yeah.
I let that slide because I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But this one, he actively, openly hates you, has been avoiding you, and then out of nowhere wants to drive you to Seattle. Do not get in a car with this man. He is going to kill you. If it was anybody other than a vampire,
I mean, technically,
if it was anybody other than this vampire specifically, you would die.
I'm sorry to say, being a vampire, I think makes this worse. Yeah, I'm trying to remember, because from Edward's perspective, it makes sense, but I'm pretty sure from Bella's perspective, at that point, you're just trying to figure out what he is, because she knows something's weird with him, and she's trying to figure it out.
Which is another reason not to get into a car with him.
Yeah, but I think it's just reader curiosity. It's like, oh, will we figure out who he is?
And I understand we need it for the plot, but at the same time, it's like, no. Actually, we don't even need it for the plot, really, because we could just have them get together at when he saves her from dying again. We don't even need this bit.
I can't even be mad about it because it doesn't happen. They talk about it and then they never do it. So I just kind of forget it exists.
That's because they do the meadow scene instead.
Which happens after the whole, I've saved your life and you know I'm a vampire and now we're going to talk about it.
Exactly. So we don't need the bit where the creepy guy asks you if you'd like to go to Seattle with him. him.
A part of me really wants to know if she would have done the charade and gone to Seattle without Edward. Edward doesn't exist. Let's pretend Edward doesn't exist. Would she have gone all the way to Seattle just to avoid the Sadie Hawkins dance?
Probably.
She would have driven 5 hours in her rundown car.
Just go to the dance and don't dance. I don't see what the big deal is. Or stay home and watch a Netflix movie. I take that back. Watch a VHS tape. Because that was still a thing in 2005. Watch a DVD.
For real. I remember what life was like in the early 2000s.
Watch a floppy disk. I mean, there actually used to be these things. They were like records. They were about the size of records. They were like giant CDs that would have a singular movie on them. Those used to be a thing. And I actually used to have a few. We used to have Fantasia on one. I don't think we have actually, that's a lie. We probably do still have the player. But that was a cool little device thingy. It was like a giant CD that played movies. Like a record, almost. It was a laser disc. It was movies on vinyl. Forgotten 1980s video disc.
That's really cool. Technology rant. But yeah, it was a little far for her to be like, oh, I can't go to the dance to you. I'm going 5 hours from here. A little extra, Bella. No, the part I don't like the mom. I didn't hate the mom in Twilight, but now that you get the other side of it and you get her mind and it's like, oh.
She's very manipulative.
She's so manipulative.
And abusive.
And he straight up calls her a narcissist.
Which isn't what that is. She's just straight up abusive.
She might be a narcissist. We don't spend enough time with her.
I didn't necessarily get narcissism vibes from her. It wasn't really a narcissistic manipulation. It was more of I require too much emotional support from my child manipulation.
Which she does do parentification. It's not super easy to be like, hey, you're obviously narcissist. I mean, if she came into the room and lectured Bella about what she's doing to her, yeah, that would be narcissist.
No, but she did immediately come in and was like, oh my gosh, we're going to do this thing and it's going to be amazing. We're immediately going to do it. And Bella's like, I don't want to do that. And she's like, what? How could you possibly not want to do the thing that I want us to do?
Well, also everything she did in her childhood where it's like, Bella, you have to be the adult so I can continue to not have responsibilities.
Also, as soon as Bella woke up, was immediately stressed and was immediately like, I'm so sorry, Mom.
Yeah, that was not great.
You're the one in the hospital bed. What are you doing apologizing to your mother?
And I know she's extremely empathetic and that is a characteristic that Edward likes, but I still feel like at some point he should be like, hey, Renee, you suck. Or think, hey, Renee, you suck as a parent.
Like, hey, Renee, you're not acting like a parent.
Or something. Not just be like, she might be a narcissist, but it's not her fault because other people can just sense her feelings. No.
There's
not much to say about any of the chase stuff. It was really interesting.
Yes.
But yeah, I feel like most of the conversation could be had on the first third because the chase and the car chase are really interesting. That was really fun to read. I liked reading that. And then there's the whole dance hall and then the Alice. I don't know. It was just so fast and it was like, yes, that happened. There's not much to talk about there. It was good. I liked that. And then we get to the hospital and then it's like, okay, I have a lot of thoughts.
So many thoughts. And then Edward's like, but I have to leave her because I'm dangerous. And I'm like, because that worked so well the first time, didn't it? And the second.
I know.
Obviously, it's going to work again.
Leads to an entire book instead of a chapter. And it kind of sucks.
Which is purely so that the author could write about the werewolves instead of the vampires for a book. But I mean, it's overshadowed by, but where did Edward go? When is he going to come back?
It's so bad. I really hope she does rewrite New Moon. Because I did not like that one. It was literally the entire time Bella being like, oh no, where is Edward? I'm like, Bella, there are werewolves now. Can we talk about that? There are things happening, but it's like, but Edward isn't here. I'm like, oh my goodness. At least give a little validity to this love triangle. Pretend you like Jacob. Like, let's talk about this. There were vampires. We had a whole book on vampires and we were super interested in the vampires, but werewolves apparently are boring.
It's because we have to pine after Edward. I don't know why there was ever a team Jacob with the way that she so dramatically pines after Edward for 2 books at least that I know of.
I know.
There is no team Jacob. It is only Edward.
It's a bad love triangle. Because it's like, oh, Edward and Jacob are jealous of each other because they both like Bella. I'm like, that doesn't constitute a love triangle. The thing has to be that Bella has to like both of them.
Except Bella only has eyes for Edward, so it doesn't matter that Jacob likes her.
Ugh. It is kind of nice hearing his thoughts because he's kind of adorable. Jacob is adorable. I love Jacob. Not as I'm a team Jacob, they should be together, because they should not. But
he's a good kid in his own right.
He's a good kid.
There was a book with a love triangle I read a while back, and the author's solution was to have her marry the one that she didn't like quite as much as the other one, right as the other one figured out that his curse was broken and he could actually get together with her.
Logic.
And then have the one that she married die.
Of course.
So that she could then get together with the one that she had liked more.
See, that's just cheating and rude.
It is cheating and it was rude. And I stopped reading the book at that point because I was like, no, and found out about the other character dying and then the remarriage from my mother, who continued to read them. But I was like, I'm done with this. No, this is not happening.
Yeah, it never gets that egregious because, like I said, Jacob's never actually taken seriously as a love interest. He keeps trying, which is another thing I could probably talk about, where it's like, please stop.
I just hate love triangles just in general, which is why I'm glad that this isn't actually one.
Well, love triangles when done right can be very good, but so many people do them badly that it's not great.
This whole book has very Romeo and Juliet vibes.
It does.
Very, oh no, he's gonna die or he's left me. I have to kill myself.
Which, fun fact, semi-happens in New Moon? It doesn't. But I think Alice has this vision, Bella jumping off a cliff, which isn't actually what happened. I don't remember what actually happened because she didn't actually just jump off a cliff, and that's why Edward came back. So that's really weak. But it's very Romeo and Juliet.
Very Romeo and Juliet.
But I would counter and say it's a little bit Jane Austen, too. There was a point where she mentioned Sense and Sensibility, and then Bella was like, I like Pride and Prejudice. I'm like, I have a feeling Stephenie Meyers really likes Jane Austen. And not like, oh, it's comparable one-on-one with Pride and Prejudice or Sense and Sensibility. No, but there's just something in the characters, because I had to read Pride and Prejudice along with this one because this book was so freaking long. I got some vibes. I could see the connection there.
I fully believe you got some vibes. I did not get any vibes along those lines at all. I don't doubt you, though.
I guess it was the whole I hate you, but I love you vibes in the beginning, and then the giving in to them, because that had a little bit of Mr. Darcy in it. Like I said, not done nearly as well.
Yes, however, because it is Bella and Edward, it was like, I hate you, but immediately I like you. Let's get together right now. Yes.
It's not immediately. It's 300 pages. It's too much.
Right after he saves her from the whatevers, and she's like, but you hate me. And he's like, but I don't. Let's date. And she's like, okay.
True. When they go to dinner and stuff.
Unlike in Pride and Prejudice, where he's like, I love you. And she's like, please.
I mean, he's never that rude, because Mr. Darcy, oof, that proposal, that was rough.
It was so rough.
I could see a couple of her influences, and that was kind of fun. I have people that like watching movies and being like, oh, this came from this, and this came from that, and that's kind of how I felt in this book. That was kind of cool. I'm curious about that one book they mention, where it's like, oh, this is one of Bella's favorite books, and then Edward reads it. Like, they give it a pretty hardcore shout out, so she must have really liked that book. I don't know what it's about or anything, and I can't even remember what the book's called, but that book got a pretty big shout out. So general thoughts. The beginning, yes. I will concede that one
was a slog and I didn't like it.
It drags on. High school psychotic is interesting enough for me to a point, but even I was like, when are we hitting the meadow scene? Because this was actually released in years and years and years ago, and it was leaked up to the meadow scene, and I'm pretty sure it was only 170 pages, and then it was the meadow scene. She has obviously added some stuff since then, just a little, but it says something when even her note in the back with the special thanks is like, oh my goodness, it's done, thank heavens it's done, I'm done, we're done, it happened. So I don't feel bad for saying like, it kind of dragged on there.
You really did.
It's 658 pages, and the prom is an epilogue, and I don't understand that.
The prom isn't important, you can just skip the prom, it doesn't matter.
No.
It's a key turning point in the movie and the Twilight book, but in Edward's version, it doesn't matter. It's pointless. What is prom?
It doesn't matter. Who cares? It's only like super important. Oh my gosh, I did not understand why that was classified as an epilogue, because I know this is not correct, but in my mind, the prologue and epilogue could theoretically be skipped and then the rest of the book. And I guess you could, but that would be a horrible ending for it to be like, oh, I'm in the hospital, done. Because the epilogue even has she got out of the hospital. We went back to Fork. She started healing. She was on crutches. Blah, 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 blah. I don't feel like that's something you should just skip over. But I think once you hit the meadow scene, it starts running. The book goes from dragging its feet to running real fast.
Yes, very quickly.
And not just because it literally goes to them running for a chapter. It's very fast paced. And it wasn't rushed, and so it's not like I think anything needs to be added necessarily, but maybe cut back some of the angst, the 300 pages. It was a lot. But yeah, I am curious. That's my one question. I think I mentioned it earlier, but I want to know what's happening with the series. Stephenie Meyer has just had such an interesting career to me, to be so beloved and then so hated and then to be coming back for it. I feel like if the movies had been better, it wouldn't have been such a bad backlash, but you could tell even the actors didn't want to be there. Robert Pattinson has spoken out several times against the series. The book at least deserved people who wanted to be there for the project. Anna Kendrick doesn't even remember being in it. But what is your one question for the series, the author, the book, the characters?
Why did you feel the need to make the first half of the book so insufferably long and grueling?
It was really long. It's like I said, it was 170 pages when I don't know if it was like a first draft or whatever, but when the leak happened years ago. So I thought at this point that this book wasn't even coming out. So I don't know. That's a fair question. But for a rating, like I said, I think the rating is also going to be pretty split because for me, it's slipping into something comfortable out of 10. I liked these books. It was a really weird brand of nostalgia because it wasn't like something like the Legend of Zelda series where I play them super often and I'm like, oh, it's nostalgia because of my childhood, but also all these other times. But it was like, I haven't touched this series in 10 years. I could not tell you what happened in Eclipse. Like, that's the kind of weird nostalgia. So to be pulled back into it, it was very comfortable.
My rating is that feeling when you take those plastic vampire teeth, the ones that are hinged, and you put them in your mouth and they're very uncomfortable, and then you have a minute of blah blah blah, and you think it's funny, and then you take it out and you're like, oh, my gums and teeth hurt.
Definitely split. It's like the exact opposite, right? Comfortable versus uncomfortable. Yeah, it goes back to if you like it, you're gonna like it, but if you don't, no, don't do this. Would you read this book again? You wouldn't, so that was easy.
Not wrong.
Maybe? It is really long, and I haven't picked up the Twilight series, and so I went from reading it 3 times over and having stuff memorized to I have not touched it in years, and so I feel like it could easily go either way with this book. And it's nothing to say about the book, but it's just there's other things going on, and these books are so freaking long. It says something when I take a month to read this book, and my husband's like, oh, you read that really fast. I'm a slow reader. My reading time is very precious. It's just so long, but I enjoyed it. I'm glad we did it. We experienced this together, and it was an experience. You can't go this long with something and not say it wasn't an experience. But if you have made it this far, thank you so much for listening to our rambling about Midnight Sun.
To Sam's rambling about Midnight Sun and me groaning in the background.
You can keep up to date with us by checking us out on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, and you can support our podcast by checking us out on Patreon, where for just $1 a month, you can get our bonus episodes, where we look at the movie adaptations to some of your favorite books. This month, David Warner returns to explore Catch Me If You Can with us.
Join us next time when we will be knitting through a book called Real Men Knit by Kawana Jackson.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I'm Sam Reiner.
And I'm Lizzie Sawyer.
And we hope to see you at a frontier next time.